Imagine a city, bigger than any in Europe at the time, built on a lake. A vibrant metropolis of pyramids, palaces, and bustling markets, all seemingly floating on water. Sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? But this was a real place, Tenochtitlan, the magnificent capital of the Aztec Empire. And the secret to its survival, the engine that fed its hundreds of thousands of people, was an agricultural marvel so ingenious, it's still studied today. I'm talking about the Chinampas, the legendary floating gardens of the Aztecs. So, how did they do it? How did the Aztecs turn a swampy, seemingly inhospitable lake into one of the most productive farming systems in human history? Let's dive in. First off, let's get one popular misconception out of the way. The Chinampas didn't actually float freely on the water like rafts. If they did, they'd just drift away. The name floating gardens is a bit of a romanticized translation. A more accurate description would be artificial islands or raised fields, but let's be honest, floating gardens sounds way cooler, so we'll stick with it. The story begins in the Valley of Mexico, around the 13th century. The Aztecs, a Nahuatl-speaking people, arrived in this region to find that all the good farmland was already taken by other powerful city-states. They were left with the marshy, swampy shores of Lake Texcoco. Not exactly prime real estate, but the Aztecs weren't just warriors. They were brilliant engineers and innovators. Where others saw a useless swamp, they saw an opportunity. They saw water, mud, and sunlight the key ingredients for life. So, the construction of a Chinampa began. It was a laborious but brilliant process. First, they would mark out a rectangular area in the shallow lake bed, typically about 30 meters long and 2.5 meters wide. They used stakes, woven together with reeds and branches, to create a sturdy fence-like enclosure. Think of it like building a giant, long wicker basket right in the lake. Once the frame was built, the real work started. Workers would dredge the nutrient-rich mud, silt, and decaying vegetation from the bottom of the lake and pile it inside this enclosure. They layered it, almost like making a lasagna. Mud, then aquatic weeds, then more mud, until the pile rose above the water level, creating a new patch of incredibly fertile land. This wasn't just any dirt, this was a super soil, packed with organic matter and nutrients from the lake floor. To keep these newly formed islands from eroding or washing away, the Aztecs had another clever trick. Around the edges of the Chinampa, they planted fast-growing trees, particularly the ahuote, a type of willow. These trees were perfect for the job. Their dense, interwoven roots acted like a natural retaining wall, holding the soil together and stabilizing the entire structure. Plus, they provided shade and wood. It was a complete, self-sustaining system. What made the Chinampas so incredibly productive was the constant, natural irrigation. The canals surrounding each garden meant that the soil was always perfectly hydrated. The plant roots could wick up water from the porous soil, so they never had to worry about droughts. The Chinampas were essentially self-watering plant beds on a massive scale. Forget your modern hydroponics, the Aztecs perfected this concept centuries ago. The canals weren't just for irrigation, either. They were a vital part of the ecosystem. The Aztecs raised fish and waterfowl in the canals. Algae and other aquatic plants flourished there. Periodically, they would dredge the canals again, scooping up this new layer of organic muck including fish waste and decomposed plants and spreading it on top of the Chinampas as a fresh layer of fertilizer. This constant replenishment meant the soil never got depleted. It was a closed-loop, regenerative agricultural system that could be farmed year-round, intensely, without ever losing its fertility. And the yields were astonishing. Historians estimate that the Chinampas could produce up to 7 different crops per year. To put that in perspective, most traditional farming methods in Europe at the time produced 1, maybe 2 crops a year. The Aztecs were growing maize, beans, squash, the 3 sisters of Mesoamerican agriculture, along with tomatoes, chili peppers, amaranth, and a huge variety of flowers. These weren't just for beauty. Flowers were incredibly important in Aztec culture for ceremonies and rituals. In fact, the famous market of Tenochtitlan was overflowing with produce and flowers, all grown on these amazing man-made islands. This agricultural powerhouse was the foundation of the Aztec Empire. It allowed them to support a massive urban population, estimated to be over 200,000 people in Tenochtitlan alone. That's larger than London, Paris, or any other European city of that era. Without the Chinampas, the Aztec capital simply could not have existed on such a grand scale. It fed the people, the armies, and fueled the empire's expansion. So what happened to this incredible system? Well, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, they were stunned by what they saw. One of Hernán Cortés' soldiers, Bernal Díaz del Castilla, described Tenochtitlan as an enchanted vision, a city of towers and temples rising from the water. But after the conquest, the Spanish had a very different vision for the Valley of Mexico. They saw the lakes not as a resource, but as a problem, a source of flooding. Over the centuries, they began a massive project to drain the lakes and convert the land for more European-style agriculture and urban expansion. As the water levels dropped, the canals dried up, and the Chinampas were left high and dry. The delicate ecological balance that made them so productive was destroyed. The once vast network of floating gardens that fed an empire slowly vanished, buried under the concrete and asphalt of modern Mexico City. But the story doesn't end there. The legacy of the Chinampas lives on. In the southern borough of Mexico City, in a place called Xochimilco, you can still see the last remnants of this ancient agricultural system. Xochimilco is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and here, you can take a ride on a colorful boat called a trajinera through the canals, floating past the very same types of gardens that the Aztecs cultivated. Today, local farmers, or Chinampas, are working to preserve and revitalize this ancient farming technique. They understand its value, not just as a piece of cultural heritage, but as a model for sustainable urban agriculture in the 21st century. In a world facing climate change, water shortages, and the need to feed growing city populations, the Chinampas offer a powerful lesson. They teach us about working with nature, not against it. They show us how to create closed-loop systems that are incredibly productive and ecologically sound. Modern agricultural scientists and urban planners are now looking to the Chinampas for inspiration. Could similar systems be used to grow food in other wetlands or urban areas around the world? The principles are timeless, using local resources, recycling nutrients, and creating a resilient, biodiverse ecosystem. The floating gardens of the Aztecs were more than just a clever way to grow food, they were the heart of a civilization. They represent a deep understanding of ecology and a harmony with the natural world. They are a testament to human ingenuity and a reminder that sometimes the most innovative solutions to modern problems can be found by looking back at the wisdom of the past. So next time you think of the Aztecs, don't just picture fierce warriors and towering pyramids. Picture a farmer in a canoe, tending to a lush, green garden floating on a lake, part of a system that fed a city and built an empire. It's an incredible story of resilience, innovation, and sustainability. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the Aztec world fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most amazing engineering marvels. See you in the next one.